Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to give people a few minutes to join still, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. In the meantime, if you want to post in the chat, introduce yourself, where you're dialing in from today, that would be great. It's nice, always nice to know who's who and where people are hailing from. So go ahead and use the chat for that while we wait for others to join. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Hello, Allison from Dallas. Awesome. India. Great. Well, I'm so glad that we have all you joining in this afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be here today. And I would like to now officially welcome you to this panel discussion about overcoming the challenges of scaling design systems. Thank you for joining us, taking some time to learn and share. My name is Jesse Anton. I'm the CEO of Whitespace. We're a design and development consultancy based in Geneva, Switzerland, with operations across Europe, North America, Asia, Pacific, and really working globally. And I'm joined today by my good friends and co-hosts from UXPin, who are an industry leader in prototyping and design operations. So together, we're really happy to put on this event with this wonderful group of panelists. And without further ado, I'm going to go into some of the housekeeping details that, so that might reduce some of the questions you might have in the chat. So just want to make clear that this webinar will be recorded. So you'll get a link to the recording afterwards if you have to drop off early, or, if you happen to be late, or, for those who unfortunately cannot attend but registered, you'll get a link to it later. So don't worry about that. Excuse me. Throughout the discussion, if you do have questions, we want you to ask them. So gather those and pop them into the Q&A in the chat. And we'll handle that Q&A portion at the end. We're going to save about 10 minutes at the, just before the top of the hour. Just in case your question doesn't get answered during that Q&A session, or if you come up with something that's like a really burning issue that you think of overnight and that you wish you had asked, don't worry, just send us afterwards. You'll know how to reach us. Send us that question. We'll do our best to get an answer for you. At the end of the panel discussion and Q&A, be sure to stick around for a few minutes if you can, if you have the time, for a quick walkthrough of UXPin Merge and an introduction to Whitespace's design operations consulting services. And I believe now is the time for me to introduce our esteemed panelists. I have an unfortunate piece of news is that Ben Scheckman from Johnson & Johnson unable to join us today. Unfortunately, he's sick. We wish him well and a speedy recovery, but health comes first. So hopefully we'll see Ben on another webinar coming up soon. So without further ado, allow me to please introduce our first panelist, Ryan Kane. Ryan is the head of user experience at the Weir Group in Glasgow, Scotland. He spent the last 10 years designing in print, physical, and digital channels for UX, UI, service design, and lean transformation projects, many of which have been recognized with industry awards. So that's pretty cool. Ryan has vast experience in managing and leading design projects and teams. He appreciates cross-team collaboration and puts emphasis on the importance of user-centered design. I really like that. Julien Vanier is our second panelist. Julien is a senior design system director at Sage in Paris, France, where he climbed the ranks over the course of 15 years and is now a seasoned design leader. And among his many important accomplishments, Julien helped create Sage's modern design system. And then he led an interdisciplinary team in the effort and task to maintain and grow that system to work for the whole organization. So that's really quite a feat. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're getting really to the heart of the matter. And last but not least, allow me to welcome our moderator, Dave Malouf. Dave is one of the first people to talk about design ops. He's co-authored a few books on the topic. And he's an operations and strategy professional who helps organizations increase the value they get from their teams through better processes, developing people, strategic focus, and managed systems. And Dave, he focuses on design operations, design management, interaction design, service design, and qualitative research. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for those introductions, Jessica. That was good. So here we are. Let's see. So gentlemen, one of the things we're going to talk about, next slide, please, is maturity and design system maturity. And there's lots of models out there about design system maturity. We're going to be using this one, where stage one is you have style guides, right? You have assets. Your focus is on branding and look and feel through your system. As you go to stage two, you're at the HTML, CSS level. You have semantic examples, ready-made CSS, but development is still required. And it's sort of like the HTML pattern library in the late teens. In number three, you have design and coded components. Image-based designs, separate libraries, interpretation is required at that point. And you have full-on design systems using an image-based design tool, so forth. And the last one is fully integrated. Design in, no code, no design drift, meaning like design doesn't change as things are used. It's consistent and seamless or no handover through the system. Right? The components sort of hold their own. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to jump to our first question. And our first question is, what's your current state of your design system? And where would you place it on that maturity scale? And either one of you can jump in.
Yeah, I can try to be the first one. So hi everyone. So at Sage, right now we are in the mix of the 2, 3, and 4, I would say. We have a part of the things that are really established and some others that are not. Just a bit of context so that everyone can understand where my answers will come from, I would say, later on. So we have a vast number of products, and services at Sage, a bit more than 100 important ones, I would say, and then multiple others. So because of that, not all of those are on the same tech stack. So obviously having one tech stack that is absolutely perfect and thinking that just CSS and HTML can work is really not where we are. We have way more things to deliver. So that's why I'm just saying that we're not exactly fixed on number 2, number 3, number 4, because we have to deal with that. But we have some other elements that may not be there that are also part of the design system for us, and that is not listed. So this is where we are.
Yeah, and here at the Weir Group, we are majority in the number 4 bucket. The reason that I say majority is that we also run a parallel React Native library, which is not currently supported fully by our tooling. We are actually one of the UXPin merge users. So our web responsive components are fully coded and come from our aligned development team back into our design library so that our designers are prototyping with real code. However, for React Native, so iOS and Android app use cases, they are image-based component libraries.
Great. So I see a lot of our attendees have jumped to the chase on saying where are they at, but we actually have a poll with that question, and there's the poll popping up. So, like, what is your design system maturity based on the 4 levels that we've been discussing so far? Just give a few minutes for people to pop their answers in there. Okay. We'll try to do things in parallel. So the next question I have, we'll start with Ryan this time, is like, how have you gone about seeking and maintaining your level of funding and the resources that you get with that funding? How do you hold on to your people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most initial and obvious ways to almost justify the spend, both CapEx and OpEx, for design systems is to simply look at how many times those components would be rebuilt and redesigned across different projects. And especially in large-scale corporates like the company that I work for, we have many federated design teams. And if you can quantify how much it would physically cost for every project to create a UI style guide every single time, and spend 2, 3, 4 sprints just creating foundational UI components, that becomes an efficiency saving for every single new digital experience that you launch. And if you can compare the amount of new digital experiences that your company is launching compared to the spend of your team, I would guarantee if you're doing things right, you're going to be in a net gain for sure. But I think one of the most important things is, although we're focusing and talking a lot about coded components and design components, I think one bit of advice I'd always give is to look bigger. And one example that we've done with that is that we have our design system, which is called DLS, the Weir Design Language System. However, a lot of our federated teams solve user needs not by building, but by buying other solutions. So white label solutions, low code, no code solutions, where they're not relying on React components. So how can you translate the styles and the appearance of your React and React Native components into a light version that's suitable for configuration? So that expansion means that teams that are not just developing, but teams that are buying and configuring are also then reaping the benefit of both time saving, and for the end user, that consistency, that trust, and that feeling that whether you've built it or bought it, the product is yours.
It's a great point about that you're not always in control of the tech stack, right? Like, not even within the company, the lack of control, but like, you have all of the different software stacks that, Workday, Salesforce, SAP, right? You have all of those that need to be considered. And most organizations don't even consider it. So it's really cool to hear you like throwing that into the game. Cool. Julian,
Yep, sure. I was not sure if you wanted me to enter this one too. So on our side, it's a bit different because we started the design system proactively, I would say 3.5 years ago, really, before it was an internal initiative by some designers. And the thing is that when, at this time, my manager was just coming from Intuit, where he created the design system for Intuit. So obviously he had a lot of knowledge on that, on what could be the benefits for a large scale company like us. And so I never had to really, I would say, justify, pieces by pieces. We tried to have that in terms of adoption, just to see this, but even the adoption piece, we are getting rid of it in a way. It's more constrained than anything else for us. So yeah, what we're delivering is more, we're heavily focused on patterns right now, way more than on componentry. And this is what is making a huge shift compared to where we were a couple of or some months ago. So this is what we're trying to do. And the benefit that we're seeing is some alignment, getting some alignment between different products from different regions on different type of needs. We have HR softwares, we have ERPs, we have accounting softwares, etc. But some of our customers are using multiple tools, multiple apps or services in multiple different legislations and countries. So what is more important is not to have full consistency, at least for us. It's more to have a seamless experience. And the seamless experience doesn't mean that you have to have 100% perfect alignment for your components, but more the intent, how do you approach the things, etc. So this is where we are right now at Sage.
That's really interesting, because that almost bridges the gap between having a style guide for UI only, but actually having a style guide for UX and design patterns and principles.
Definitely.
Brings me back to the days of like the Yahoo pattern library, the original, right? I just wanted to share a story when I was at Northwestern Mutual about how we were able to get funding, because it was, at the time, it was definitely a hard go. But there was one thing that any consumer-facing company has to deal with in today's world, and that's accessibility. And what we did is we spoke to legal and sort of like got the lay of the land about where we were. I don't want to go into any other details there, but there was, like everybody, there's issues. And we used fear, fear of lawsuit, the fear of, to really just say, hey, we're gonna build in accessibility into the design system. And we were able to like grow the team threefold within a year because of the way we were able to tell that story and get that budget. And it wasn't just more people, but it was also more scope. So obviously the accessibility people, but also content people were being brought in, and we were solidifying the link between development and design as well.
Yeah, that's a really good tactic, especially if you're working in a company where digital is not the core product and it's supplementary to a physical or an industrial product. Yeah. There's usually a lot more inclusion, health and safety, legislative requirements, depending on the countries you're selling to. So that's a really good way in to justify.
We are also, just to amend, I would say, or UXPin, I think more. Yeah, we are doing a lot of things also on that. So it's in parallel. I'm the one driving accessibility initiative for Sage, in any use cases, product, .com, and other tools, learning, etc. So I'm really into that, and I've just finished, I think, 2 hard week, I would say, on this. So yeah, that's why I have an accessibility designer on my team. So when we come back to what Jess said when he presented me, I have 11 folks, and we are I have 5 designers, 5 UX UI designers. The others are doing specific type of jobs. And this is also a way to approach and to justify, definitely, as you said, both the cost of a design team, because definitely we master more than developers most of the time what is needed, what is expected. Most of our developers, and I think that the people that are attending this meeting will confirm, most of the developers, what they want to do is to build features. This is what they want to do. They don't want to fix specifically accessibility. So if we have some people that can come, tell them exactly what to do, come with some designs, prepare with what we have, what we're starting with, it's accessibility champions, in every team, etc., to leverage the knowledge and the expertise. I think that this is clearly a way to justify the cost from making our products accessible.
Cool. I'll let you both decide who wants to answer this question first. But the question is what governance structures are in place, and why did you choose to organize the team the way you did? It's sort of like 2 separate but related questions. But the core question is like, where's governance in your design system, and how do you maintain the design system?
Yeah, I can jump in with that one. I'll probably give some context to the structure of the company first so that it makes sense. So here at the Weir Group, we are consisting of individual federated businesses with a group corporate function over the top. So each of those federated businesses all adhere and use the same design language. However, they have their own strategies, own budgets, own product lines, etc. In the corporate layer, that's where I sit. And we, for want of a better phrase, we own the design language. And I really don't like that word. It is a living, breathing thing. No one owns it. We're all responsible for it throughout the community. But the reason that there is that quote unquote ownership is so that there's dedicated resource that is not wearing 2 multiple hats. We've probably all worked at companies where you have a single design team or design teams that have the objectives of both delivering design on products and projects, but also maintaining and growing and iterating a design language. And we all know which one gets deprioritized when things get tight. So by segregating those and having the hands-on design work inside the federated businesses and the maintenance and growth and focus on the design system being at a corporate lens, it means that both of them are prioritized. They both have their own strategy, their own funding, and their own vision. And in terms of governance, we run what we call a contribution model. So as I said, we will never claim that our design system is finished, and I don't think any of us should. It should be a living, breathing thing. And we have our own proactive growth and roadmap for it. However, the other design teams in the federated businesses may come up against new use cases, which the library does not cater for. Now, they don't need to come and ask for permission and ask for us to help them out. They are fully empowered so that they can, following high-level patterns and styles and rules, etc., but they actually both design and develop those new components, and they're contributed back into the central library, similar to how developers run with GitHub releases, etc. We utilize UXPin's merge release function so that they can be contributed back in and then communicated throughout the wider community. So what that means is you have a team in one area of the business with a new use case and a team in a different area with the same new use case. You've removed the duplication and you've created efficiency where you've got empowered teams contributing into one central library with a corporate function sitting over the top of it.
So that's very interesting to see how it can be different, I would say, in a way from different companies. And definitely, as the more you have the same tech stack, the better it is. I would love to have just one tech stack at Sage, for sure. So on our side, what we're doing is we are meeting every 2 weeks with what we called the Extended Design System Team. So those people are, so this team is composed of my team members. And in addition to that, UX representative for each major product, I would say, or part of the business. So we are meeting every 2 weeks. We are looking after what my team has been able to do, what others, I would say proposals have been made on their own teams. The goal is just to check if we have any specific need for adding a variation to a component, adding a new pattern, creating a new component, having a different approach for something, etc. So we are constantly exchanging with them on a daily basis. But in addition to that, we have this fixed meeting of an hour every 2 weeks to look at the things. We are prioritizing also the type of work that we're doing with them. So the goal is clearly not to say that we're able to deliver the best design system in the world from a designer, UI designer point of view, for example, which is, oh, everything is absolutely perfect. I have delivered all my components. I'm happy. No, the goal is just to make sure that we support, because this is how I do consider a design system team, a support team for the others. So how can we support our product leaders, I would say, to deliver the experiences that they want to deliver for their end users. So if there is, or if they are multiple teams saying that they would like to work on this more than something else, then definitely we'll prioritize that, even if that would have been better for us, I would say, to deliver those components first or those patterns first. So we are working like that. So they are partially driving our roadmap. We still own our roadmap in a way, but it's really proactive thing and co-construction. And we've just introduced also something that we call the community patterns. So this is more, until now, we wanted only absolutely perfect, clean things on the design system portal. But it was not always working because it's taking a lot of time for my team to analyze, to come back to the team, say, oh, you're missing this piece, but you haven't done the accessibility part. And what about this, etc. So before it goes out, I would say, in being public, it could take a couple of months, when what we want to do is just starting to deliver something so that other teams, as you said, Ryan, other teams can see and be aware that there is another project or that is in progress right now. So the faster we can go on that, having still a basic template so that it's not, absolutely messy on the portal, then it permits people to start to see like, oh, but product A is doing that. Oh, that could be extended maybe to do this. And the more you get feedback on that, the better it is, because we can then see if there is a traction or not to create an official design system pattern for this, or if it will just stay a beta stage on the community patterns. But this is how we are making it.
It's really interesting, both of y'all. It's I think Ryan, like when you were talking about the contribution model that you and your team work from, is it always just one design system stack, or are you like layering, like you have the corporate stack and then there's a product stack that is also in play as well, and they sort of have an inheritance that they work through?
Yeah, no, we run one, and that's an intentional omission, is that we want that community around it and that shared ownership around it, and also the byproduct of driving down deviation from it as well.
So we have our next poll. What's the size of your design system team? Inquiring minds want to know. And when we talk about team, we mean full-time, like who are dedicated, which is why that first question, that first answer is there. We don't have anyone dedicated. Assuming the first one should be 1 to 5.
What could be interesting also is to see how much it's distributed within the different type of roles.
Yeah.
Because definitely it's not the same if you have, I don't know, just UX designer, just UI designer, UI UX, if you have a lot of devs, if you have no devs. So this could be also an interesting split.
Zachary, you were saying like your company has 350,000 people. Like the way I would think of that is there's more than one company, right? And the you sort of like break it down into like, well, what's that company have, you know? Yeah. There you go. Just me.
We've all been there, you know it.
Yeah. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, we've all started with a team of one, you know, and sometimes so many design systems usually is just like some body with initiative who's just, I got a problem. I need to solve this problem. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy. So kudos to taking on the challenge for sure. All right. Next question. You know, it's like talk about OKRs or KPIs, and everybody's got to measure what they measure. So there's like 2 questions here. I'm going to ask them separately. The first question is, what are you measuring to show success? What is it? How do you tell people the story of being successful?
That's a large thing. So definitely we have OKRs. I'm not the best person to talk about OKRs, I would say, because I always struggle finding figures, I would say, to be able to say, oh yes, we can absolutely measure that we've done that. I think a part of that is why it's hard, I would say, for designers and design system team to really share something that is valuable. It's, I think, because most of the work that we're delivering may not be perceived. At least this is how I feel it. And that's maybe also because, as I said, we have a kind of strange team in a way. So I have a content designer, for example. I have a researcher on my team. I have an accessibility designer. So for accessibility, we might be able to tick some boxes by, okay, you've done all of that, you've checked all of this. But for content, how can you really measure the quality of the content and this kind of thing? So this is where I'm always struggling. So I have to do it. So I'm playing the game, but I'm more looking after how much have we been able to impact the company? How much have we been able to support the company? And that's why we started to use a satisfaction score metric. So we are asking developers and designers of our community to tell us frequently every quarter how they feel about our team, about our tools, etc. So we have different categories, etc. And I think that this is even more valuable. So I use that for my OKRs just to make sure that we're progressing. Because this is the final intent. The final intent, guys, for all of you listening, I think, is not to tick a box to say, oh, I've delivered my component. If no one is using it, then why did you build it? What is important is to make sure that you do the right thing for your teams, for your product, for your company, and for your end users at the end. So just be focused on that more than on, metrics, I would say. Measure how much you've been able to support your colleagues.
Yeah, I think that's fair. This is definitely an area for growth for the company that I work at. But to answer the original question, what am I measuring? I'm lucky to have a performance objective that is 100% of new digital experiences utilize the Weir design language system. That gives me a quote unquote mandate, but it gives the federated design teams the confirmation to use that support and call on that support. And they can almost end up defending it on your behalf. The measurement of such, I would love to say we have a automated numerical KPI tracking that tracks GitHub repositories or tracks how many times a design component is dragged and dropped. But it's all manual. So we run Scrum of Scrums across all of the different design teams, where we have the drop-in sessions to see how they were using the library and what new use cases are coming up against. But then we also perform strategic heat map analysis against all of the components. And that's one of the beauty of having dedicated resource to a design system like my team. My team does also deliver on projects, but we have carved out resource, mostly myself, around the growth of our design system. So we can spend time doing proactive research alongside our federated teams, where they are doing research to find out, has the new user experience that they've launched solved a problem? In parallel, I'll be carrying out research to understand, where are people clicking on a card? Do they know to click here? Are they trying to click here? Where are they rage clicking on? How many people are using the tab key to open a drop-down menu? So that you can have these two parallel streams of user research with different outputs. So it's completely manual at the moment, and I'd love to learn how that would be automated, but it's manual, and it's only doable because we've got that objective carved out for the team.
Excellent. The second part, I think that you all answered, which is about adoption, and you all chose adoption as, like, you know, a key element that you're measuring. I really like, Julian, like, you getting to the satisfaction of the people whom you serve, right? One of the things we were trying to do is to track the consumer NPS to the satisfaction of the teams to the design system team, you know, so that we were trying to prove that the more satisfied the user teams are, the more satisfied the consumer experience would be, right? So we were trying to, like, create some kind of correlation, because in my mind, what you really want to do is impact that consumer experience, right? Whoever's consuming the UI that the design system is made out of, you know? Like, if a door is easy to build to a building and install it, but the door opens the opposite way that everyone expects it to open, right? It was really good for the developer, but it had no bearing for the person who actually had to open the door after it was built, right? So we want to try and bring those things together somehow. Cool. All right. Hopefully we'll have time for one more question or one more poll. How does your team accommodate multiple or changing tech stacks? I think you answered it a little bit, but maybe you can go a little deeper this time.
Okay, I'll jump on that. So on our side, we're not so much taking that into consideration, to be perfectly transparent for now. So even if we have a large variety of products, so this company exists for, I don't know how long, something like 40 years, my age almost. So definitely we have a lot of different technologies and all tech stacks. We have some products that are very robust, but built 25 years ago. So definitely some of those products, we're not asking them or pushing them to adopt the latest pieces of the design system. So one very simple example, Sage has heavily rebranded last year. Huge rebranding for the first time. Sorry, because it's in parentheses, to come back to how much you can see and measure, the investment and the need of a design system team. For the first time in 15 years that I've been working there, product has been really considered from the beginning on the rebranding piece. Obviously, campaigns and marketing, because that makes sense, it's starting from them. But product has been heavily considered by Sage this time. And this is definitely linked to the work that my team did. Yeah, and now I've lost track of what I wanted to say. That's stupid when you start the parenthesis. Sorry for this. What was the question at the beginning? I'm very sorry.
Tech stacks.
Yeah, the tech stacks. Thank you very much. So we are not looking too much into that. We have prioritized some products. The good thing is that we're trying to have one React library today. So we have a React library that is consumed by an important part of our key products, I would say. But we want to make that even better. So we are looking after some technologies that permits to generate native code, but through just one code base at the beginning. So we are experimenting that, but we just have one developer on our team, and it's the other teams that have to align with the design system.
And for us, I'm probably in a position that most people will be jealous of, in that we are harnessing the company's very ambitious digital transformation goals. And one of the ways that we are benefiting is calling out the dependency on having a single unified tech stack. Wow. So if we want to be achieving those visionary transformation digital goals, we need to be as efficient as possible. And the way to do that is having a single tech stack, both for dev and design. Yeah. So even though we have federated teams, they are all on one UXPin instance, one central account management within my team. And then developers are all on React and React Native through one repository for each. And that's it. And we have that agreement, and I'm very lucky to have that agreement, because I can imagine the headaches that must be in place if that wasn't the case.
Right, that's amazing. I've never worked anywhere where there's like any kind of scale, that there's one tech stack, just like one acquisition and it's all over. Or at least for 2 years, it's all over, or a huge expense, right?
And I think similar to how we have a corporate UX function which supports multiple teams, we have a corporate enterprise architecture function who are very good at their job, and work to define that, and we've benefited massively from it. Yeah. So if you have friends in enterprise architecture, start buying them coffees now.
Yeah. I've been in situations where we just tried and just couldn't. It was just like, this is not the hill I'm going to die on, kind of thing. But yeah, it's kudos for sure. All right, we have a poll, and it's actually our last thing before we go to Q&A. So if you could start a design system from scratch, would you consider using web components for flexibility and longevity? Resounding. Right. Awesome. So it's time for some Q&A. I think we're going to get some help from the UXPin folks about which questions and stuff we're going to look at. Jesse.
Yeah, Dave, we've collected all the questions. Yeah. So I will first just back to the very first question. There was something for both of the panelists related to the maturity scale, TJ Harrop's maturity scale. It's just a detail. What the question is, what are image-based and code-based components? Could you explain the difference?
Yep. So if we take probably the most common UI component that we've all used and designed, if we take a simple button, the coded component is that you would have a development team code the component, building in all of its different states like hover, disabled, error, etc. Build in all of its responsiveness first, and then that comes back into your design library so that when you're making a prototype, you are using that coded component, which means out of the box, you get all of those interactions which you don't need to simulate within your prototype. On the flip side, this would mean you drawing a red box for your button, a black outline for the button, manually changing the size up and down. Of course, there's auto layout that can help with that, but essentially you're manually creating, simply using colors and shapes, a simulation of that component. So there's massive risk with that, the deviation between what is in the real world with users and what's in your design system. But there's also lack of efficiency, massive lack of efficiency there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Julien, if you don't have anything to add, I'll pull up the next question. Okay. So there's a question again to both panelists from someone at John Deere. Related to the collecting the patterns across the company, and basically the question is, what's the best approach to collecting and consolidating all these patterns that exist throughout the different products? And Julien, you mentioned you have over 100 products.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So how have you accomplished that?
So as I said, we have way more than 100, but we are focusing more on I would say 25, 30, so which is way more achievable. So the thing is, first of all, you have different layers in a way on when you consider what you consider a pattern. So yeah, I've seen some questions around if it's just a pattern for this kind of component tree or this kind of things. But we have we've identified 54 patterns that we need to work on already within just 3 months. So 54 patterns, but they are going from something like bulk action. So when you need to create something that will perform a lot of actions like multiple select, and then when you click on that, it will just automatically do all of this. So this is really component linked, but with table, data grid, and those kind of things. And we have on the other end, we have a gender neutral type of pattern for the content piece. We have a bereavement service. So when someone dies, what happens to this account for this person? Where does it sit? Who can reach out to the data? What is the process? How is it made? Everything is kind of manual today, but we need to make something smoother, and we have to be really empathic in this use case, because most of the time it's small businesses and they will have to come and say, sorry, my husband died, I need to be able to access this data. So you have to be to have a very nice pattern. It's a very, very specific use case. So we're just looking after thinking with the extended design system team. We have our stakeholders giving us some ideas also. And I will stop here because I don't want to take too much time.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Ryan or Dave?
No, it's all good.
Question about engaging developers in design system contribution. What have your approaches been? Maybe we can start with Ryan. How have you gotten that engagement, that commitment, and that collaboration, especially when they're focused on developing features?
Yeah, and I think it would depend on your company's setup. General advice would be to involve them in the design. Run design sprints, have them hands-on. They might not fully understand the use case or the problem you're trying to solve, but they don't need to. They can bring that pragmatism of what an MVP delivery could be for a component versus something that will actually cost months and months and months of work. So involve them up front, involve them in the design. The other thing I would suggest, which is what we're doing at the Weir Group, is having development resource aligned to the design system team. So at the moment, I have a development resource that simply work on, I say simply, but they do a very good job of complex tasks. But in essence, simply they work on only the iteration of components within the design system. So they have that ownership and accountability as much as I do. And they're part of that journey. They're not just a resource, they're part of the team. I'm taking that slightly further. I'm actually hiring a UI developer to be part of the UX team, to be in there, to have the same accountability, go on the same journey as you, and not just be seen as a resource or a means to an end.
So on our side, what we're doing with that is just, so we're a bit more exploded in a way. So I have a developer. She is mostly focused on making our most common library, up to date regarding accessibility, latest updates, etc., so that the team that is focusing on this library can be focused more on delivering new components, new elements, etc., fixing bugs and those kind of things. So we are not on our end exchanging that often with developers on products, but it's the product leaders, the UX product leaders, that are constantly in relationship with them. So as we are going through those UX people, as we are sharing also on different Slack and Teams groups, they are always aware about what is coming next, what we've delivered, what can be done, etc. They're seeing that they have access to the GitHub. They can ask us for anything. So this is how we're making it on our side.
That's great. You actually partially answered the next question I wanted to ask you, which is there's a question about how what tools you use essentially internally for communication. How do you facilitate, this knowledge sharing, the community contribution of patterns or questions about the design system? How do you field all that sort of thing from the people that are really not only contributing to it but consuming it?
Yeah, so that's a large question. So we're using a lot, as I said, Teams, Slack, forms. We are asking also for some surveys, as I said, for the satisfaction score pieces, for example, and for many other things. Because when we are working also on new components, on new patterns, what we want to do is to take people, some designers on products, to be with us. So this is what we ask, we call the task force, just to make sure that we are working together. So it's also embedding people. So they are starting to see that, okay, when they ask the design system team for a few things, they may get some answers and it can help. So then they are more aligned and happy to share. The community patterns piece is also a very good thing, because they can also illustrate and show their work to everyone else. Like, hey, look, in my small product, even if I'm the only designer, I've been able to do this kind of things, and I think it could be valuable for everyone. So yeah, whatever is available, we're using it.
Ryan, do you have a magic bullet for that?
I don't. And it's manual and it's proactive and it's embedding within these federated teams, which I would be sad to lose sight of, to be honest. But
yeah, talking to people, right? It's a good thing, isn't it? On terms of maintaining quality, how have you approached auditing of products and work? I mean, Ryan, you said you have the luxury of basically everybody sort of has the mandate to strictly align with it. Any pushback, any deviation, any how and especially Julia, you have so many products out there, and you said some are not, really on the system itself. But how do you go about the sort of surveying the land and auditing?
I think linked to the problem that you shared there, if your design system is robust enough, and if it's based on coded components, then the chances of poor quality or deviation is dramatically reduced. People can focus on what the experience is they're trying to deliver rather than the right color for the button or the right shade for a card, etc. But the way that you can audit that is, again, through great engagement and embedding. So we run Scrum of Scrums, which is one of the most successful ways. So just having those updates regularly for regular teams doing showcases. We also run a remote community of practice where we have monthly meetups, and the different teams will play back what they're working on, and we'll have a positive design crit where we can all have a chance to suggest and talk in a safe environment. And, yeah, I think it's about creating that embeddedness and that togetherness, so that it becomes okay to point out if something isn't quite right. But investing in your design system will dramatically reduce the chances of that happening.
Great. We have time maybe for one more question. There are a number in the list. I have one, so I'm going to be selfish and ask it. How do you guys document at your companies? Did you roll your own documentation system? Are you using something like Confluence? Have you gone and bought something off the shelf? How have you approached and tackled that?
UXPin.
Okay.
So the beauty of UXPin is that, yes, you can create your design system and all your components, but the design systems feature within UXPin pulls all of those components and gives you a responsive web space for you to dictate your guidance and all your rules. And we've split that out into various different use cases. So we have a native set of guidance, we have a web responsive set of guidance, and then we also run an identity set of guidance. This is your generic design considerations, colors, typography, iconography, imagery, etc., etc. But that comes out the box when using UXPin.
Julia, what about you guys?
We're using multiple things. So it depends for the use cases. When it's an internal thing, for example, we were using Confluence, but we're not that happy, even if it's very linked to Jira, which we are using on a daily basis on our side, but it doesn't fit exactly our needs. So for the design system portal, for example, we're using Zero Height. For some other things, we're starting to use Notion. So we are changing and adapting to what is the best approach for us. So yeah, and after that, in terms of tooling, I'm starting to use, just like many other people, ChatGPT to generate basic elements and in a markdown format, which helps a lot, to be perfectly honest. But definitely, it's not the same quality as a designer, obviously, because you cannot give all the inputs. But that helps to start federate something and see how things can be templated.
Great. So we're at the top of the hour. We're going to wrap up now. If your question didn't get answered, again, contact us, and if it's really burning, we'll get back to you on it. Otherwise, I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists and our wonderful moderator, Dave. Thank you so much, guys, for this contribution. I thought the conversation was fascinating. We could probably go on for a lot more because this is a vast topic. What we're going to move on to now is a small demo of the UXPin merge system. I'll introduce you to some of the stuff we're doing at Whitespace. Thank you, folks, for joining. If you have to drop, don't worry. There is a recording of this that you'll get at the end. So check your inbox. I think everybody knows where to find us. Thanks so much. for signing up and participating. I hope you learned something. I hope it was valuable. I certainly did. Any last words?
Yeah, thanks
a
for
lot.
the opportunity. Great to talk. We could talk all day about this.
Yeah.
Feel free for anyone who's joined to connect with me on LinkedIn. We have some growth coming up, and we are actually going to be recruiting some extra UX designers, not just here in Scotland, but worldwide. So feel free to connect and chat about that. But thanks for listening, everyone.
All you designers out there, you heard it here. You know where to reach Ryan. Okay, thanks very much. So I'm going to hand over to actually Sage from UXPin, not to be confused with Julien from Sage.
Hello, everyone.
For a presentation on Merge.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jesse. And thanks again, Ryan, Julian, Dave. It was very amazing just to be kind of a fly on the wall and listen to all of the experience that you have and all the insights that you shared. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to those who are staying. Hopefully this is only going to be a very short demo of UXPin Merge. So if you have any questions, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to our sales team at sales@uxpin.com, and I'd be happy to facilitate a more in-depth demo for you. So with that being said, let me share my screen with you all. Perfect. So we kind of hinted towards some things regarding UXPin Merge. I know that Ryan's team uses UXPin, so he kind of shared a little bit about what their process looks like. And for this walkthrough, I want to just do a quick high-level overview of UXPin as a whole, and then UXPin Merge and how you can actually leverage coded components. We're mostly going to be focused on that aspect of things today. But one thing that I do think is important to clarify is that UXPin is a full stack platform. So you can do everything from your wireframing, building things from scratch, more of that, pixel kind of pushing type of prototyping, all the way through to your coded components and being able to leverage an existing design system, whether that's one that is in-house and proprietary or a third-party design library. I work with a lot of teams that use things like Material, for example, Ant Design. You can use these open source libraries to leverage Merge and start working with coded components. So I won't go too much into the image-based design versus code-based design. We kind of touched on that earlier. But the biggest difference between UXPin is that even from a prototyping perspective without working with Merge, you are still going to be getting the benefits of working off of a code-based design tool. And what I mean by that is that we're moving away from sort of these artboards and more vector raster-based prototyping. You're able to create functional, high fidelity, and interactive prototypes in UXPin without having that code-based aspect to it as well. So for example, if I look at this sign-up form, this was something that was just prototyped directly in UXPin from scratch, like you would with something like Figma or InVision. And you can see that the difference here with UXPin is that you're actually able to create conditional logic. And in this particular example with the sign-up form, it will stop you if you don't have an email fully baked in, or if you didn't type an email input that was accurate. And then if we click into the button that says sign up, we're able to actually pass that data through to the next section of the prototype. So you're able to get more of a full perspective of what you are intending in design to then hand over to developers. And we're able to have more of that flexibility to create a better conversation that's happening between design and development as a whole. So that's just a quick high-level overview. I did want to make that distinction with UXPin. And now going into UXPin Merge specifically, what it is it's the ability to take your existing coded components, your React components, and bring them from your design system. Like I said, it can be an open source library or your own personal design system. Bring that through with Git and then have that sit within UXPin so that designers can now be prototyping and working with coded components. We also have a storybook feature where you can take your storybook library and bring that into UXPin as well. I'm mainly going to be focusing on the Git integration today, where you're pulling directly from GitHub or Bitbucket, any repo that you're using. And so this is just a kind of funny example. A lot of the topics that we talked about today, right, with the product drift and what you might intend in design and then what actually ends up being produced in development. And it's a great example of just how frustrating the process can be because there's such a distinct disconnect that's happening between two teams. And the goal with Merge is that we're able to bring teams together, whether it's not only your design and developer teams, it's all of the stakeholders that are involved, right? We're able to do better user testing because we have prototypes that are actually high fidelity and interactive. We're able to actually see the user flows that are intended so that we can ask better questions and we can have better conversations. And this is something that's achieved by being able to have something that allows you to have that pixel perfect parity between what you already have and what you've already built out, and then what's being produced in design. And so what Merge does is it allows that ability to have more governance and consistency around your design system and your teams so that we can have happier designers, happier developers, and overall just be able to produce better products. So a quick overview here. This is the process of bringing in your design library. I'm just going to kind of go high level with this. Essentially, we're going to be pulling directly from your Git repository and then bringing that through to UXPin. And in UXPin's editor, a designer will now have access to all of those coded components. Ryan mentioned this earlier, where any of that interactivity that you have, for example, if I take a look at this page here that I've built, these are all coded components that were brought through with Merge. And if I'm working with something more complex, such as a sortable table like this, what you'll find is that a designer didn't have to actually create that interactivity because this was already coded, right? So now we're able to start having more component-driven prototyping, where a designer can drag and drop these components that you've already done all of the due diligence of. It's a part of your design system. And this is something that you're going to be able to continue building up with. So just give me one moment. All right, so in the simulate, comment, and spec mode here, I also just want to highlight the developer handoff, right? So we have these coded components, and if a developer were to go in, get this prototype handed over to them, what we're going to see instead of CSS is live JSX code. So a developer can just copy and paste this code and they can start building it out into production. Keep in mind, this isn't smoke and mirrors. These are live coded components. So all of this code is usable, right? It's not something that's being generated from UXPin. This is coming directly from what you've already built and then being referenced in UXPin. So I'm going to open up the editor here and just show an example of where it actually sits in the tool. So I just have a page open here in UXPin, and we have our properties panel, and then our pages and layers. And if I go down below, I can see that I have a tab for my design system libraries. And in UXPin, I have way too many libraries, so just ignore those. But the most important thing here is that you can see that this Git symbol here, it's letting me know that this is a merge library that was brought through. All of these are coded components. So I'm going to use material as an example and just go ahead and show you what it looks like to actually prototype with a coded component. So I just drag and drop this button over, and you can see that we have different properties that are available to us. And so this is where we start to see governance and consistency. These properties are as flexible or as rigid as you need them to be. This is something that you set up. These are the parameters and guidelines that you have around your design system. And so in this case, I can make adjustments to the label. I have these different options here, whether I want it to be secondary, error, success. So we can go in and we can start to select and build out the type of button we want this to be. And we have different options here too, like size and things like that. And these are, again, all properties that are defined by you and your team, so that it's going to be consistent with the products that you're building out. And if I just go back quickly here and I go into my specs, I can see that this button has that code here that a developer can then reference. And one thing that I want to also highlight is layers and being able to work with nested components, especially if you're familiar with atomic design. This is going to be relevant to a lot of teams' processes that I talk to. So I have this card here, and if I go back into my pages and layers, I can see that this card is composed of multiple smaller components. So I have a button, for example, card content, and this is where you can start to build up and create flexibility around the types of designs that you're building. So I might have this card header and say, actually, I don't want it, right? So I can just delete that. And maybe I want to go into this card media layer and I want to make changes to the component itself. And so we're building off of properties that have already been established and they're in alignment with your team and what you want your parameters to be. But I can go in and start making adjustments. Maybe I want to take this away. I can go back to my library. I can drag and drop. So if I wanted to take these buttons, right? And so now we're building off of a card component that we had, but we're creating a completely different component that is going to be in alignment with what you want to be building out. And again, if I go back into my spec mode here, I have this card and it's made the proper adjustments to the code. So all of this, a developer can just copy and paste, and it's going to create this card that we've built out in design. So I know a lot of you have stayed a little bit over, so I appreciate the time that you took today. I would love, if this is something that you think is interesting that might be able to help your team, feel free again to reach out. You can either reach out to me personally, sage.young@uxpin.com, or you can reach out to our sales team, sales@uxpin.com. Thank you everyone so much. And Jesse, I'll pass it back to you to close things out.
All right, great. Thanks, Sage. That was awesome. Yeah. So we at Whitespace have been on the UXPin bandwagon for a number of years now, especially since seeing Merge. We used it before, but have been very enthusiastic about Merge since it came out. And if the UXPin people could bring up the slides once again, that would be great. Ah, there they are. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I know I'm keeping you. There are some real diehards on the call. I really appreciate. You guys are the best. I'm keeping you from breakfast or lunch or dinner, all three, perhaps. But I'm just going to take a quick moment to walk through Whitespace and our services in the design ops space. So we are advising companies on a number of the things that we talked about in today's call, such as governance, OKRs, communication, tooling, workflow, etc. We're working with a number of companies on creating design systems. So moving from design into code, and also vice versa from code to design. So we are able to assist you with a UXPin merge should you wish to use that. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is that we are building a design system of our own based on web components. I would love it to know if any of you are interested in beta testing that when it becomes available. And if you could just leave your answer in the poll, that would help me a lot. And I very, very much appreciate you joining this call together with UXPin. We're grateful for your attention. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for the day. If you want to know how to find us, you can find us at whitespace.ch. There are a number of white spaces out there on the planet. We're the Swiss one, so whitespace.ch. And you'll find other links here in the chat if you want to go directly to our design operations service. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or evening, whatever it is, and peace. Ciao.